And while the last eclipses of words resounded in the naves of the cathedral, an air of tension and hope was making its way through the ancient walls of Rome. The ideological battle that had divided the church was transforming into a mosaic of passions, intrigues and difficult choices, in which each believer found himself having to decide whether to follow tradition or embrace a change as uncertain as it was necessary. In the days that followed, Bishop Eleganti found himself walking the cobbled streets of the city, reflecting on recent events. Every stone, every hidden corner, seemed to tell a story of faith and struggle, and he felt he was the protagonist of a story bigger than himself. During a nighttime walk, as the silence of Rome was broken by the murmur of the faithful praying in the small churches, an old friend from the past stepped forward, Father Lorenzo, a priest known for his charisma and his ability to dialogue with the people. "Marian," the priest said in a hoarse, age-laden voice, "I know your conscience is tormented, but remember, faith is never a linear path. It is a journey made of curves, obstacles and, sometimes, surprising deviations." Father Lorenzo's words were like a balm for the bishop, who for years had been carrying the weight of history and expectations. At that moment, his rebellion was not only a challenge to the established order, but a desperate attempt to rekindle the fire of inner truth that had always animated his spirit. Meanwhile, tensions were rising in the heart of the Vatican. Cardinal Koch, now aware of the inevitable clash between opposing visions, was holding secret meetings with other clergy members. In a lavishly furnished room, hidden from the eyes of the world, there were heated discussions of alliances and betrayals. Koch knew that every word, every decision, could change the fate of millions of believers. "We cannot allow our church to become a shadow of itself," he declared at one of these meetings. "We must find a balance between openness and fidelity to our identity." But dissenting voices were growing louder, and in that room the echo of ancient disputes resounded like a harbinger of the future. One evening, as Eleganti was returning to his study, he received an anonymous letter, written in an elegant and ancient hand. The words, steeped in mystery, told of a conspiracy hidden in the folds of history, of ancient alliances between powerful families and prelates who, since the time of the council, had sought to shape the destiny of the church according to secret visions. The document revealed traces of a secret institution, a brotherhood that operated in the shadows, whose purpose was to preserve spiritual power at any cost. Reading it made Eleganti tremble. It was as if the ghosts of the past had awakened to test his determination. Determined to uncover the truth, the bishop immersed himself in a personal investigation, contacting old friends and scholars of ancient scriptures. In the silent corridors of a historic library, among yellowed volumes and dusty manuscripts, he found clues that confirmed his fears. The reform proposed by the Pope was not only a theological question, but an elaborate stratagem to cancel the spiritual sovereignty that for centuries had served as a beacon for millions of believers. The traces led to a tangle of dark relationships, where worldly powers had intertwined with faith, transforming the church into a stage for ambitions and compromises. Meanwhile, the faithful were fired up with fervor and passion. Parishes across Italy were experiencing a climate of expectation and concern, between discussions in small cafes and whispers in school hallways. Social media was in turmoil, and videos of Bishop Eleganti's fiery homily were shared with hundreds of thousands of views, transforming him into a sort of tragic hero, a symbol of a fight against a system that seemed disillusioned. The answer was not long in coming in one of Rome's most emblematic squares. During a spontaneous demonstration, a group of believers, armed not with flags but with prayers and songs, marched toward the Vatican. Their voices, full of hope and anger, merged into a single chorus calling for truth and transparency. In that context, the image of Bishop Eleganti, proud and determined, became the symbol of a rebellion that did not want to bow to compromise, but sought to rediscover the lifeblood of authentic faith. In a clandestine meeting held in an ancient monastery nestled in the hills of Rome, Eleganti and a small group of allies gathered to define their next moves. Seated around a solid wooden table, amid flickering candles and the smell of incense, they discussed heart-to-heart. "We cannot allow the truth to be obscured by those who seek only power," Eleganti said, his voice steady despite the emotion. "We must rediscover the essence of our spirituality and find the strength to be ourselves, without masks." The debate was heated and constructive. Bold ideas were proposed, such as the organization of popular assemblies in the different regions of Italy, open meetings in which the community could freely discuss the changes taking place. There was talk of rediscovering the ancient spirit of the confraternities, not to renounce dogma, but to bring faith closer to the hearts of the people. As the hours passed in that meaningful room, the world outside continued to evolve. News of scandals, betrayals, and secret alliances arrived daily, fueling a climate of mistrust that involved even the most devout. Journalistic investigations multiplied, and a well-known newspaper, determined to give voice to the truth, published an article that revealed compromising details about some of the clergy involved in the secret dossier. The shocking images and confidential documents acted as a catalyst for a wave of protests and calls for reform by the faithful, who felt betrayed by a church now distant from their spiritual needs. Faced with this whirlwind of events, Cardinal Koch found himself having to confront not only his ideal of reform, but also the consequences of his political choices. During a long private conversation with a close collaborator, he admitted, "Perhaps we have exaggerated. The search for global unity cannot sacrifice the roots of our faith. Perhaps the time has come to listen to dissenting voices as well." That moment of vulnerability, even if hidden from the eyes of the world, could have changed the fate of a debate that, until that moment, seemed destined for eternal opposition. The Synod in the Vatican, now upon us, was transformed into a sort of theater of destiny. The chairs of the cardinals and bishops were arranged in such a way as to accentuate the differences and, at the same time, the need for direct confrontation. In an imposing room, adorned with frescoes that narrated episodes of faith and sacrifice, the debate became heated. Eleganti, with his almost glacial calm, exposed his reasons, while other prelates tried to bring out the hope of a renewed church. Every word, every look, was imbued with the weight of history and the urgency of a truth that could not be denied. It was in that electric climate that a young priest, Don Matteo, came forward. With a voice full of idealism and passion, he proposed an alliance between the different religious realities, a bridge not only to bridge the differences, but to build a future in which spirituality could be free from rigid patterns and unalterable dogmas. "Our strength," he exclaimed, "lies in the ability to listen, to understand, and to accept that faith, like every human experience, is in continuous evolution." His words were greeted with enthusiasm by a part of the assembly, while others, anchored in the past, considered them a sign of a dangerous slide towards relativism. Yet, in that whirlwind of opinions and hopes, the will to change seemed to find fertile ground. As the Synod reached its climax, and the decisions to be made could have marked an irreversible turning point for the Church, Bishop Eleganti realized that the battle was not only about the structures of power, but about the very heart of spirituality. It was a challenge that forced him to look inside himself, to confront his fears and to rediscover that inner fire that, despite the storms of time, had always guided him. During a pause, as the lights in the room dimmed and silence fell like a curtain, Eleganti spoke up, "We cannot deny change, but we must not give up what makes us unique. Faith is not a prison, but a journey of continuous discovery." That moment of sincerity struck the hearts of many, revealing the hope that, despite the divisions, there was still room for authentic and human dialogue. And so, as the shadows of the night lengthened over the ancient walls of Rome, the spiritual storm continued to rage. It was a silent revolution, made of gestures, glances and unspoken words, in which each believer, deep down, was only trying to find meaning in the midst of chaos. A simple but powerful truth: faith, like life, is a journey made of challenges and discoveries, and the courage to change, while respecting one's roots, is what allows the soul to grow. With the Synod now concluded, the Church found itself at a crossroads. On the one hand, the echo of the proposed reforms and innovations; on the other, the ancient call of a millenary tradition that could not be forgotten.